St. Elizabeth's East Parcel 13 Surplus Declaration and Disposition Approval Act of 2022. This is Bill 24-466. It was reported out of the Committee on Operations and Facilities, chaired by Robert White, and the Committee on Business and Economic Development, chaired by Councilmember Kenya McDuffie. Who am I recognizing to move the bill? Don't all speak up at once.
So moved.
Mr. McDuffie's moved the bill. Discussion.
Yes, Chairman.
Yes, Councilmember Trayon White.
Thank you. So today, I want to speak on Parcel 13, disposition at the St. Elizabeth campus, where the government is selling this parcel for $1 for 99 years. We are essentially using taxpayers' dollars, and we have to be responsible. We must make sure that we are using the best interest and getting enough bang for our buck for our residents, not just in Ward 8, but across the city. We are doing what, 4 deals today for $1? And DC has had a history of neglecting the poor and working class in our city, which now we are what we call a housing crisis. It has been reflected in the audit that came out that shows the misuse of funds for the Housing Production Trust Fund, especially for those lower income earners in our city. To continue to do this is irresponsible and creates ethics concerns. Brown and black people in DC are in a deeper housing crisis. We're forced to move out. And we know that lofts, 1 bedrooms, and 2 bedrooms are simply not enough. We get calls every day in my office about people needing 3 bedrooms, 4 bedrooms, and just not able to get it, even with a voucher. And so these type of housing programs are not working for everybody in our city. On this particular project, I was hopeful to work with the developer. They said they would change the affordability levels, in which I got something yesterday where they just added 3 bedrooms, and so thank you for that. But I think the 0 to 30% AMI was less than 5 in a 400-unit building, in which this project got getting additional $19.6 million from our government. That's a win-win. You get a property for $1, and then turn around and say, yeah, but I need another $19.6 million. Any family in DC can win with that type of leverage and money going to any bank. And so I'm concerned about what we are doing, and I'll be being fiscally responsible to our residents. This type of leadership on executive and on the council is socially engineering gentrification. One of the other issues I had with this project was about the development team, which was a team that started in Virginia in 1977, one company in 1986, and have merged to start a company in DC in 2018 to become a DC business. But the last property they did in Ward 8 at St. Elizabeth's property had air and water seeping through the windows, the entire basement flooding in some of the buildings, mice infestation. The HVAC system went out several times in the building. We're talking about a building that hasn't been remodeled that less than 5 years ago. So what's going to happen to the building in 15 and 20 years? The same general contractor. And so we have to ensure that as we are a body of oversight, that we are doing our due diligence with this money. I'm concerned about this. I ask my colleagues to vote no, and so we come back to the table with something that works for all residents of the district and make sure we are doing what we're supposed to do that's right for our residents, because if not, we're selling our city out, and our city is looking like we're selling her as a cheap hoe. And so we have to stop giving our land away and make sure we're doing in the best interest of all residents in the District of Columbia. So I also have an amendment, Chairman, to this bill. Hope those on the dais can support the amendment today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Trayon White. Are you moving the amendment at this time?
Yes, Chairman.
All right, we have the amendment before us. I'm going to speak first before I turn to colleagues. I just want to say this. My sense, sitting on this, sitting at some distance from what's been going on with this legislation, is that there are objections that have come late to the process and that have caught the 2 committee chairs by surprise, and that's never a good thing. And I know that there is deference often given to ward members, but it's important as part of our process that we hear what concerns are early enough in the process that they can be worked out rather than when the bill comes to the full council. But I would add this as well. You know, it sounds great to say that this is outrageous to be unloading district land for $1. I mean, that just sounds horrible. But why don't we look at what the financials are on this project? We don't know, I don't know what the costs are. I assume the committees looked at what the costs were of building the housing and also of subsidizing the housing. There is a component that is affordable. You know, we would all like that every project on district government land be 100% affordable. We'd even like it to be 100% deeply affordable, but there's a cost to that. And it may be that the cost for the affordability component is in the buy down of the land value. It's an equation, and its equation has got to add up to a profit margin, not a huge profit margin, but a profit margin for the developer. That is how development works in this city, is that it is a public-private partnership. It is not the district government building the housing, it's the district government relying on the private sector to build the housing. And we don't want them to make lots of money. We don't want a huge profit margin in, but there has to be some. So there's the cost of the land, there's the cost of the construction, there's the cost of buying the affordability for whatever length of time there is for the project. And I don't know offhand what that is, but I do know that that's in a pro forma. And the pro forma is what I assume the committees looked at to see whether it was reasonable, the profitability. So it is great rhetoric to talk about how outrageous it is to buy it down for $1. But let's look at the rest of the equation first and whether, in fact, this is reasonable from an economic perspective. And I'm not aware of that having happened. Councilmember, Councilmember White, you've spoken. Others are in order. Councilmember Robert White.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Councilmember White for his amendment. I do want to just take some, I want to clear the air a little bit about this notion of the council engaging in social engineering as this bill and other dispositions come through my committee, which Councilmember White sits on. We have a law in place that the council passed that dictates the amount of affordable housing. We make sure every bill goes through that. We challenge every single development project in relation to the law, and when I don't like the outcome, if it complies with the law, I work to create legislation to address it, which I have introduced. Now, there is a reason that we lease out property for $1 a year in order to build affordable housing. And members may sometimes not like the amount of affordable housing, and I support members in their wards working to get more affordable housing, but I don't want to be party to this notion of engaging in social engineering. We do evaluate these projects. We do look at the appraisals. There are independent appraisals for these projects, and the committee has run its own appraisals. So I support what Councilmember Trayon White is working to do here. I do not support the notion that my committee is participating in any social engineering. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember White. Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Chairman. I know this is an issue that people are very passionate about. And I think when my colleague, Councilmember Trayon White, was making his remarks, he may have accidentally used a phrase that was derogatory towards women. I think we could just ask that that be stricken from the record.
Noted. I said nothing related to women. I don't know where you get that from.
Okay, well then maybe we misheard you. And we can keep it moving.
Yes, I think we'll keep it moving, but thank you for noting that, and the record will reflect that concern about decorum. Councilmember McDuffie.
You know, I want to just add, you know, to the extent there is a goal of constructing more affordable housing in the District of Columbia, particularly with an emphasis on deeply affordable housing. I support it. And I don't know, I don't want to get lost in this conversation about this project. The fact that there aren't any allegations that people didn't comply with the law here. The law lays out what's required when these RFPs are and the responses should comply with the law. And, when it comes to the Committee on Business and Economic Development, and specifically the disposition of public land, we are asking those questions about compliance with the law. And the level of engagement was fairly robust here. I look at the record and the testimony and think about the number of meetings that occurred and the opportunities to raise these issues, and then to hear at the hearing that their support generally for it. It leads to a decision as a committee chair to move these measures out of committee when you get that type of support, both from the ward council member and folks throughout the community. I regret that we're at this point today because my understanding and my feeling is that we have been both sensitive and thoughtful to any input that we've gotten as a committee from people in the community, as well as ANC commissioners, civic leadership, and council members. And the reason that I'm comfortable supporting this today is not because it hits on every single goal that we should have as a city to preserve existing affordable housing or to build more affordable housing. But we did follow a process that provided, I think, sufficient opportunity for people to contribute feedback that may have informed the process. And yet here we are today, and this project does have the 30% affordable. Whether people like the formula and the makeup of the unit sizes or how affordable it is 30% affordable between all the units that are affordable, 126 of them between 0 and 50%. 32 at 30% MFI and 94 at 50% MFI out of a total of 421 units. And there was a meeting on March 28, 2018, June 29, 2019, May 12, 2020, June 3rd, 2020, July 15, 2020, October 7, 2020, December 20th, 2020, March 4th, 2021, October 29, 2021, December 6, 2021, December 6, 2021, two different meetings with two council members, Robert White and Trayon White, and then December 11th, 2021. On January 11th of this year, there was a meeting with me in my office and my staff, and then updates at ANC 8C on January 20th, 2022, before we got to, where we are in terms of markup and first reading and today. And so I just wanted to make sure that people were informed by that, and my commitment to continue to work with Councilmember Trayon White, because I definitely think your goals are laudable, and I do not object to what you're saying. I just think that it is in the right mode to move this forward today because of everything that we've done to get to this point. And so I wish there was a way to work this out, and obviously I think you tried, I tried, I think Councilmember Robert White has also tried to see if we can work it out to make sure that we had your support today.
Councilmember Bonds.
Thank you very much to all who've been involved in this discussion. I really believe that this is the time that I must say that when we think about housing and housing affordability, when we think about the committees, I think we're beginning to see it's kind of scattered all over the place. But when the public sees the word housing as a part of a committee, they think that's where I can go and that's where I need to be. The business community understands a little differently, and they go to 3 different locations. My point is, I think as we strive for improvements at our council level, we've got to consider how we construct our committees and how the committees really work for the community that's utilizing our committees. And so I just want to, I feel strongly I need to put that on the record. As someone who has chaired the Housing Committee concerned with housing affordability for the past 8 years. And I can tell you, sometimes people are very lost in this process. And then we get the concerns expressed in this manner. And I think once we have an opportunity to put all of the services that are provided as it relates to housing together, at least maybe we need a conference committee process. I think we would get a better product and we all would understand how our dollars are really being spent. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councilmember Bonds. I want to ask a question. We have the amendment before us. I want to ask a question of our budget director. My understanding is that you've prepared a fiscal impact statement, that this amendment doesn't have a direct cost, but it might have implications that could cost a district. Could you explain?
Correct. I'll read the paragraph from the fiscal impact statement and then I can expand if necessary. The Office of the Budget Director was unable to review the project pro forma to determine how the change in unit mix and MFI would affect the project's financial feasibility. These changes could create a financing gap in the project funding plan that would need to be resolved prior to commencement of construction. However, there is no impact on the district's budget and financial plan because there's no obligation on the district to cure any financing gap that may materialize due to this amendment. So basically, a change of this nature impacting the level of affordability and impacting the unit mix, the level of affordability would reduce the revenue or the income stream from the building, as would the change in the unit mix because there's less revenue per square foot from larger units as opposed to smaller units. I mean, it's a calculus that is not something that can just sort of be figured out on the fly. But it could create a gap that could prohibit or prevent the project from commencing until that financing gap is filled.
Thank you, Madam Budget Director. Councilman McDuffie, second round.
Yeah, man. Ask to a second round.
Do you want to go before Mr. McDuffie?
You're the chair. Just make sure you don't hear.
All right, Mr. White,
Second round.
second round.
Yes, thank you. I want to ask the budget director, is it clear that she mentioned, and I tried to write it down, that there's no impact on the district financial plan? Is that accurate?
There is no obligation for the district to fill any financing gap that would be created due to a change in the unit mix or MFI structure. So yes, so there is no impact to the financial plan. However, I can't say that there wouldn't be a financial impact to the project itself, but that's separate from the budget and financial plan.
Thank you. I was
Sure.
trying to figure out from a government perspective, our obligation. Anytime you change a formula for building a project, it changes the finances. We are aware of that. I think that one of the statements that was used as to what I said was blatant rhetoric, and in that I didn't understand where that was coming from, because it seemed like to me that what was stated was a generalized statement about affordable housing and a formula without any details about this specific project. But I do want to state some specifics to give clarity. Originally proposed was 421 units, and of that, it was only 32 deeply affordable housing. And in total, it was 126 total affordable housing out of 421 units that we are disposing for $1, and then turning around and giving this project another $19.6 million in a housing crisis where poor people need housing in the city and our working class, and not just in Wardy, but all over the city. It was also said that we have a law that administers this process. We also know that Kathy Patterson's office issued an audit because we were not in compliance with the law, and I had to rewrite the law. It was passed through Anita Bond's committee because we were out of compliance with affordability levels for the Housing Production Trust Fund. And so if we're going to say what it is, let's say what it really is across the board, that these are deals that's happening and it's not in mind with all people. We talking about, it was no 3 bedrooms there originally. We did get a proposal yesterday that had 3 bedrooms yesterday, but it's still not enough in this area with the need. And we're basically giving this land away.
Oh, thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember McDuffie, second round.
You know, Mr. Chairman, I think the record is sufficient to go to a vote. And I wanted to thank the budget director, you know, just for speaking about the numbers associated with the amendment. You know, again, we can pay for more affordable housing, and I think this council is committed to doing that. The mayor has sent down, you know, a tremendous amount of money for the Housing Production Trust Fund. The council has supported it. In many cases, we've actually increased the amount that has been going into the Housing Production Trust Fund. Not to suggest there are any issues with HPTF, but the 19 million you mentioned is likely the cost. It will come from the Housing Production Trust Fund to help build the affordable that's in the current affordability and mix of programming that you just outlined, Councilmember, which is, you know, of the 421 units, 126 would be affordable, with deeply affordable at 32 units and 94 units at 50% MFI. So I just, you know, again, I'm not objecting to the concerns that you're raising. I just think, you know, everybody needs to understand, you know, the process that we've laid out, the way that we do hearings, and the time frame in which I think it's best to try to negotiate some of these things. And then simply the cost associated with constructing more affordable housing and where we are constructing this deeply affordable housing in these larger family units. And I would suggest that we should be more thoughtful about where these things are being built so that we are distributing the opportunities to families to live across the District of Columbia in quality, safe, affordable housing, and not simply constructing that in the same places that we've done historically, where governments before us, long before us, have concentrated poverty and disadvantage in certain communities, which has made it difficult for them to really thrive. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Henderson? and then
Thank you,
I see
Mr. Chairman.
Jennifer.
I want to ask a clarifying question in terms of the amendment, and I don't necessarily know who the appropriate person is here, if it's the Budget Office or the General Counsel or Mr. McDuffie or Mr. White, but because I did in our last break get some clarity in terms of how are we adjusting bedroom sizes in this particular disposition, when in others, we haven't been able to amend it. It's either vote for it or don't vote for it. And my understanding is that because the executive sent this over as a bill, it can be amended in this way. But the question that I have though is, do we have any understanding here of what this amendment would do in terms of whether or not the project moves forward or not? I don't want anyone to have the assumption here that we are not in favor of apartments and homes for families, 3 bedrooms, et cetera. But I also am trying to be cautious of us making the precedent setting of making changes in terms of bedroom sizes here at this stage of the game in this process, and whether or not that would cause others who want to seek projects with the district to just avoid it in the future. So I guess my question is, like, what happens? Like, does the project move forward? Does it stop? Does it, I mean, I think Ms. Budoff, you mentioned like there would be a gap in financing, but that's not really our problem because it doesn't have I mean, I'm paraphrasing. You didn't say it's not our problem, but like it doesn't impact our financial plan. That would mean that the developer has to go figure out how to fill that before things move forward, yes?
Well, a fiscal impact just looks at the impact on the district's budget and financial plan. So, you know, this kind of change could very well change their pro forma and, you know, cause and again, I haven't seen the pro forma, but if it does, there would be a financing gap. there's only so much project income that would support a commercial loan. So, typically it's the responsibility of the government entity to fill that gap. It looks like we are already filling that gap. I mean, so we may have to provide more assistance. They may need, I don't know. And I think that's part of the problem, is that if you change sort of the fundamentals of a project without really knowing how it's going to impact the financing plan, you don't know if this is something that would cause the project to stop. They'll probably have to rerun their numbers and, I don't,
Madam Budget
Yeah.
Director, you said it looks like we're already filling that gap. You meant we're already filling a gap, but this likely creates a new gap.
for the current project structure, for the unamended MFI and unit mix.
Okay.
Councilmember Henderson?
I mean, I guess my concern here is the unknown, in that there's been a lot of work that has gone into this project thus far. I imagine, if I remember correctly from the hearing, they were expecting to move forward in 2023 on this. So this sets everything back, and probably would add to the additional costs. I'm over my time. Thank
If I
you.
may venture, the essence of your question gets to the level of our responsibility. This came over as a bill. We are a legislature. We can do whatever we want to. We can change the financials completely, but there are consequences, and it's up to us and our sense of responsibility. So if you think that the affordable housing component is inadequate and you want the developer or the city to absorb the consequences, not knowing exactly what those are, then you will vote a certain way. If you think that we've got the project and maybe it isn't smart to be messing around with it here on the dais, then you would probably vote a different way. But in the end, the answer to your question is on us individually and what our sense of responsibility is with regard to our duty. Who else do I have? Councilmember Pinto.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have a similar-ish clarifying question for Mr. McDuffie. So oftentimes when we provide abatements for different projects, this conversation of what the appropriate financials and math works out to is very central to that, because part of the discussion is, but for this abatement, this project will not proceed. And if we go too high with the affordability requirements, people are still not going to take us up on the project, even though they're getting this abatement. But with this project, because it's a disposition of the land, how does that calculation transfer over to your calculation of making sure that the project is still financially feasible? Because it seems like there should be a distinguishing line between the abatement of private property and district-owned land that we're disposing of, but could you elaborate on that piece?
So, I think part of the context for and hopefully this is responsive to your question, Councilmember Pinto, but when these RFPs go out, there are certain requirements that are baked into the RFPs that should be included in the responses to the RFPs, and if not, are likely to be deemed non-responsive. What's outlined in 10.01 is included. When it comes to whether or not it's financially feasible, ultimately is a decision that the developer who's responding has to make. And if the requirements associated with the disposition are found to be too onerous or too expensive, or deemed not to pencil out by a developer, then either they're likely not to respond, or if the things start to change after they've submitted a proposal and the amount of units of affordable housing either are requested to be increased or the unit sizes change, the unit mixes change, then it's going to change the pro forma. It's going to change the financial fundamentals, and then there's got to be a decision made as to whether or not it makes financial sense of a developer who is seeking a profit And I think that's just, it's part of the process, and I can't speak to whether this person is gonna say, I'm done, what's in this amendment simply doesn't work. I would think that they would definitely say, this isn't what I signed up for, and I'm not sure if it will, given that there's already a likely request for 19 million to help fill the gap that exists. If we say we're gonna pass this amendment without knowing what we don't know in terms of additional costs, then there's no way we can say we're actually helping to make this project work and delivering additional affordable housing for residents of the District of Columbia. That's all I'm saying in terms of the context.
Okay, well, thank you so much, and it's very possible I missed this earlier, but I'm glad that piece is on the record of the additional cost to the district that we are paying for this project. Because I've heard a lot about, $1 disposition, and was trying to figure out the distinction between our treatment of private property that we're trying to incentivize certain behavior versus district property that we're disposing of. But thank you very much.
Yeah, and just really quickly, I mean, when we talk about the $1, it is the cost of the land as developed and associated with the government requirements, right? And so you look at that land and you might think it's valuable, and it is valuable, but we're talking about land that by law requires 30% affordable housing, between 0 and 50%. And so you gotta bake that into whatever you might think the value of the land is by itself. It comes with these requirements.
Councilmember Lewis George.
I have a question about has there been changes from I only have from the committee report last time. Had there been changes to the numbers? So the previous developer proposal describes plans for 421 multifamily rental units. All would be studio, 1-bedroom and 2-bedroom apartments. Of those, 126 or 30% would be affordable units for 50% AMI or below. And so technically that math is about 29.92%. And then the remaining 295 units will be market rate. And so if we pass as is, if that's the current makeup, then we would be approving a plan that only creates 9 2-bedroom units at 30% and 9 of 420 units affordable for small, low-income families. Is that the correct numbers here?
I mean, I wouldn't frame it that way, but yeah, your math is right, and the unit count is right, Councilmember. I will say, if I could just really briefly, when the Committee on Economic Development, we're looking at the housing, right? And there's a housing committee, but we're also looking at the economic development around the area. Y'all have to remember, these folks in Ward 8 also want healthy food options, right? So they want grocery stores. Yeah. They want amenities that are walkable to their neighborhoods. And, when you talk about government trying to ensure those things happen, we're not operating and building grocery stores as a government, right? And these people who are in this private sector who are considering what we say we want, even when we're trying to incent certain economic activity, there's a cost associated with it. If they look at these areas and see a lack of density and a lack of incomes, it is likely that they're not going to get the same sorts of things that we're seeing in other parts of the city. And so we're trying to be thoughtful about this. This is not to discount the dire need for housing affordability that I know you all care about, and I do too.
Yeah.
It's just really trying to create the environment where we can do more of what these communities need and want.
Yeah, and I know the development plan is anticipated to create 381 temporary jobs, and through the construction period, and I think 69 permanent jobs as a result. But I guess, given what we just heard about making this decision because it's a legislation and the unknown here, I am just throwing this out there. Would it be prudent for us so we don't move forward on this amendment and create bad results, would it be prudent for us to just withdraw it until the Ward 8 council member can work out percentages that work? Just so that we're not all in position to vote on something right now where basically we do have an unknown based on the questions from my colleagues. Answers to my questions.
I don't know that there's any, the unknown is created by the amendment. And we gotta recognize, the amount of time that's gone into the process thus far. And so, I've already been communicating with Councilmember Tranwire, and I really appreciate his passion about this issue and what he's trying to do. I think that I will be willing, I hope that this could pass and we continue to work on it. Doesn't mean that we stop working on this because we passed this bill today. And this guy, Adrian Washington, who's the lead developer at NDC, Neighborhood Development Company, is a lifelong district resident, born and grew up in Ward 8, not too far from this development here, right? And so, he's not gonna skip town, and I would hope that we can get to the point where we get, the council members' support, and that's generally how we try to operate, and we only moved it because we thought we had it. So that's that's my hesitancy about supporting this amendment today, or withdrawing it. We've gone through a process here where, and I don't want to speak to Councilman Robert White, but we've been communicating with the developers and others, and they've not been hard to reach as far as I'm concerned, and we've tried to answer as many questions as possible and be as flexible as possible with the unit mix, et cetera.
Chairman.
Councilmember White, Treon White, third round.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank my colleagues for the dialogue. I want to thank you, Councilman McDuffie. One thing you mentioned was you hope that we can move this along in good faith and hopefully get something done with the developer. I just want to go on public record to talk about, I've been communicating, you mentioned Adrian Washington, who is developer from Ward 8. We haven't had a comprehensive conversation about this project yet. I've been communicating with the representative from the administration, who assured me that we will have some healthy compromises to get this moved along, because she told me they were facing some deadlines and needed to move it out of Robert White's committee. And I communicated that to Robert White's committee to get it moved out and hope that we can land somewhere, in which we never did. I had a meeting with them last week in hopes that we can move it forward today. And one person on the phone is saying one thing, another person on the phone is saying something exactly opposite. One person, we can do this, the person say we can't do it. I said, once you figure out what you can do, come back to me before Tuesday, that way we can be on the same page. And that didn't happen until a conversation or something got sent yesterday, which was Monday. And so it's not like no dialogue and good faith has happened. It's been continuously happening, but it hasn't landed in a place that warrants us to utilize our legislative ability to approve a project that's not feasible for the District of Columbia's tax dollars that we're pouring into this project. And there's a lot of hypotheticals going on, but for me, I've been working with the administration trying to land somewhere, and we haven't landed there. I'm just being honest and open about the process, what's been happening.
Thank you. If there's no further discussion, we have the amendment before us. This is the amendment by Councilmember Treon White. All those in favor of the amendment say aye. All those opposed to the amendment?
Roll call.
Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Treon White?
Yes.
Councilmember Treon White votes yes. Councilmember Allen?
No.
Councilmember Allen votes no. Councilmember Bonds?
No.
Councilmember Bonds votes no. Councilmember Che? No. Councilmember Che votes no. Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson?
No.
Councilmember Henderson votes no. Councilmember Lewis George?
Yes.
Councilmember Lewis George votes yes. Councilmember McDuffie?
No.
Councilmember McDuffie votes no. Chairman Mendelson?
No.
Chairman Mendelson votes no. Councilmember Nadeau?
No.
Councilmember Nadeau votes no. Councilmember Pinto?
No.
Councilmember Pinto votes no. Councilmember Silverman?
Yes.
Councilmember Silverman votes yes. Councilmember Robert White?
Yes.
Councilmember Robert White votes yes. Mr. Chairman, there are 5 yeses and 8 noes.
The amendment fails. We have the bill before us. Further discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
Councilmember Silverman.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the hour is late and everyone is tired. So I will just make 2 observations about the conversation. I think the emotion that is being shown shows that this is of great concern to everyone on this dais. And again, Councilmember Robert White, I look forward to more discussion in your bill next year. The second thing is, I think there is concern about what exactly is baked in. Especially what kind of profit a for-profit developer needs to supposedly make a project work. And I'll just point out, in this project, Demphead's appraisal found that a developer could build this project at a profit, but not enough profit to motivate a for-profit developer. So another option the district could take would be to find a nonprofit developer to see if a nonprofit developer can make this work. But instead, in this project, we are leasing the land for $1 per year, and we're sweetening the deal to motivate that for-profit developer to ensure a $19.5 million profit for Neighborhood Development Company. Those are the numbers. I think I appreciate what Councilmember Trayon White was doing with his amendment, which is to say we need to push. I remember there was a project at 65 I Street where the new museum is, where the developer said, oh, we absolutely can't put any more affordability, and we kept working with that developer, and they did put more affordability in. So we need to negotiate and sometimes take a strong stand to say no, and to see if they'll come back with a better deal. So again, I think this discussion on all three bundles today shows that there is a lot of concern about not getting enough for what we are giving to the for-profit development community. I will be voting no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Further on the bill? We have the bill before us. This is Bill 24-466. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Councilmember Allen?
Yes.
Councilmember Allen votes yes. Councilmember Bonds?
Yes.
Councilmember Bonds votes yes. Councilmember Che?
Yes.
Councilmember Che votes yes. Councilmember Gray?
Yes.
Councilmember Gray votes yes. Councilmember Henderson?
Yes.
Councilmember Henderson votes yes. Councilmember Lewis George?
No.
Councilmember Lewis George votes no. Councilmember McDuffie?
Yes.
Councilmember McDuffie votes yes. Chairman Mendelson?
Yes.
Chairman Mendelson votes yes. Councilmember Nadeau?
Yes.
Councilmember Nadeau votes yes. Councilmember Pinto?
Yes.
Councilmember Pinto votes yes. Councilmember Silverman?
No.
Councilmember Silverman votes no. Councilmember Robert White?
No.
Councilmember Robert White votes no. Councilmember Trayon White?
No.
Councilmember Trayon White votes no. Mr. Chairman, there are 9 yeses and 4 nos.
The bill is approved on final reading.